The stars burned cold and distant as the Zthrani battle fleet emerged from hyperspace. Admiral Crixvorn stood at the center of his command ship, his four arms folded behind his back, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display before him. 300 warships spread out in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal of a dozen conquered worlds. "Scan complete," reported his tactical officer. "The human colony world designated Earth 7 lies directly ahead. Population approximately 40 million. Defensive fleet consists of 17 vessels." Crixvorn clicked his mandibles in what passed for a laugh among his species. 17 ships against 300. The humans had been a curiosity to the Galactic Council for the past decade, ever since they had stumbled into interstellar space with their crude vessels and strange customs. They were soft creatures, lacking natural weapons, lacking thick skin, lacking the speed or strength of any proper predator species. Yet somehow they had spread across a dozen worlds in that time, building colonies and trade routes with alarming speed. The Council had tolerated them, the Zthrani had not. "Signal the fleet," Crixvorn commanded. "Standard conquest formation. We will sweep aside their defenders and claim their world before the next cycle ends." The Zthrani were conquerors by nature and by choice. Their empire stretched across 200 star systems, built on the bones of species too weak to resist them. The humans would be no different. A brief battle, a swift surrender, and another world would join the collection. The human fleet moved to intercept. Their ships were ugly things by Zthrani standards, boxy and practical, lacking the elegant curves that proper warships should possess. They spread out in a defensive line between the invasion force and their planet, impossibly outnumbered but showing no sign of retreat. "They do not run," observed Crixvorn's second officer, a young female named Thessakai. "All other species run when they see our numbers." "They are either brave or foolish," Crixvorn replied. "It matters not which. Begin the attack." The first wave of Zthrani fighters launched from their carriers, swarming forward like a cloud of metal insects. Behind them came the heavy cruisers, their plasma cannons already charging with deadly energy. The formation was perfect, practiced over 1,000 battles against a dozen species. The human ships held their position. They did not advance, they did not retreat, they simply waited. Then a single transmission came through, on an open channel. "Zthrani fleet, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You are entering human-protected space. Turn back now and no harm will come to you." Crixvorn almost dismissed the message entirely. The arrogance of these creatures, demanding that his 300 ships turn away from their 17, but something in the human's voice made him pause. There was no fear in it, no desperation. She spoke as if she genuinely believed she could stop him. He decided to respond, if only for his own amusement. "Human Commander, I am Admiral Crixvorn of the Zthrani Dominion. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender your world now and we will spare your civilians. Resist and we will burn everything." There was a pause. Then the human spoke again, and now there was something else in her voice, something that sounded almost like pity. "Admiral, I'm going to give you some advice. In about 5 minutes, you're going to want to take it. I suggest you study your tactical data on human biology. Specifically, look up something called persistence hunting." The channel closed. Crixvorn turned to Thessakai with confusion in his eyes. "What is persistence hunting?" The young officer quickly accessed the database they had compiled on human culture and biology. Her compound eyes widened as she read. "Admiral, it appears to be a method of hunting that humans developed in their primitive past. They would chase prey animals across great distances, not to catch them quickly, but to exhaust them. They would follow their prey for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never resting, until the creature simply collapsed from exhaustion." "That is absurd," Crixvorn declared. "No predator hunts in such a manner. It is inefficient." It appears humans are uniquely adapted for it, Thesekai continued. They lack natural weapons, but they possess remarkable endurance. They can regulate their body temperature through sweating, allowing them to continue physical activity far longer than most species. They can recover from physical damage that would permanently disable others. They simply keep going. Krixvorn dismissed this with a wave of his upper arms. An interesting fact about their primitive past, but meaningless in space warfare. Continue the attack. The Zthrani fighters reached weapons range of the human fleet. The first exchange of fire was brief and brutal. 3 human ships took heavy damage, but they managed to destroy an entire squadron of Zthrani fighters in return. The humans were better at combat than expected. But numbers would tell, they always did. Then something strange happened. The human fleet did not stand and fight as expected. Instead, they began to move, pulling back toward the asteroid field on the edge of the system. It was not a retreat exactly. They maintained their formation, firing as they went, destroying fighter after fighter, but they were definitely moving away. They run, declared Krixvorn with satisfaction. Pursue them, destroy them before they can escape. The Zthrani fleet gave chase. Their ships were faster than the human vessels, and they began to close the distance rapidly. The human commander was fighting a losing battle, and she surely knew it. Yet she did not surrender. She did not scatter her ships in different directions to ensure some survived. She kept her formation tight and her course steady, heading deeper into the asteroid field. The first hour of the chase was simple. The Zthrani had plenty of energy reserves, plenty of ammunition, plenty of everything they needed. They pounded the human ships whenever they came within range, and the humans took damage after damage. 2 of their ships went dark, unable to continue. But the humans kept moving, always staying just ahead, always drawing the Zthrani deeper into the asteroid field. "Admiral," said Thesekai carefully, "we have now been pursuing for 1 hour. The human ships show no sign of stopping." "Then we continue," Krixvorn replied. "They cannot run forever." But even as he said it, he felt the first stirring of unease. The human commander's words echoed in his mind. Look up persistence hunting. The second hour passed. The Zthrani fighters were running low on fuel and had to return to their carriers to refuel. The heavy cruisers were still at full capacity, but the constant maneuvering through the asteroid field was putting strain on their systems. The human ships, meanwhile, seemed to have no such concerns. They twisted and turned through the rocks with surprising grace, always finding the most efficient path, always staying just out of reach. "Admiral," reported the tactical officer, "we have lost contact with 4 of our cruisers. They appear to have collided with asteroids while pursuing the humans." Krixvorn felt his mandibles tighten. 4 ships lost to rocks. It was embarrassing. Tell the fleet to be more careful and continue the pursuit. The third hour brought more losses, not to human weapons but to the relentless chase itself. Ships broke down. Crews made mistakes. The asteroid field seemed to grow more difficult to navigate with every passing minute, as if the humans knew exactly where to lead them to cause the most problems. And still the human fleet kept moving. They took damage. They lost another ship. But they did not stop. They did not surrender. They simply kept going, always just ahead, always drawing the Zthrani deeper and deeper into the rocks. Commander Sarah Chen watched the tactical display aboard her flagship, the UES Marathon, and allowed herself a small smile. The Zthrani had taken the bait. Now it was time to see if they had the endurance to survive what came next. "All ships," she transmitted to her battered fleet, "begin Phase 2. Let's teach these conquerors what it means to chase a human." The chase through the asteroid field continued for another 3 hours. 6 hours total now, with the Zthrani fleet growing increasingly frustrated and tired. Their ships were designed for quick, decisive battles, not prolonged pursuits through treacherous terrain. Their crews were trained to overwhelm enemies with superior numbers and firepower, not to chase them through endless fields of tumbling rocks. Commander Chen understood this. She had spent months studying Zthrani battle tactics before the invasion began. She knew their strengths, and more importantly, she knew their weaknesses. The Zthrani were sprinters. Humans were marathon runners. "Status report," she called out across the bridge of the marathon. "7 ships still combat-capable," replied Lieutenant Park from the tactical station. 4 others are running with us but have minimal weapons. The Zthrani have lost approximately 40 ships to accidents and mechanical failures. Their pursuit formation is spreading out as ships fall behind. Chen nodded. The numbers were working in their favor, not enough yet but getting there. "Any word from Admiral Vorn?" "He has transmitted demands for our surrender every 30 minutes, Park said. "Each message sounds more frustrated than the last." "Good, let's make him more frustrated. Signal the fleet to increase speed by 15%. Take us deeper into the field toward the Iron Cluster." The Iron Cluster was a region of the asteroid field where ancient planetary collisions had left behind countless chunks of dense metal. Sensor systems became unreliable there. Navigation became more difficult. It was exactly the sort of place where a small, nimble fleet could cause problems for a large, unwieldy one. Admiral Krixvorn was beginning to understand that something had gone wrong. 6 hours, he repeated, staring at the tactical display. "We have been chasing them for 6 hours." "Yes, Admiral," Thesekai confirmed. "We have lost 42 ships, 31 to collisions with asteroids, 8 to mechanical failures caused by the extended pursuit, 3 to human weapons fire during close-range encounters. And we have destroyed only 3 of their ships." "That is correct." Krixvorn's compound eyes swept across the display. His fleet was no longer the tight, disciplined formation it had been at the start. Ships were strung out across millions of kilometers of asteroid field, each one moving at its own pace, each one dealing with its own problems. The fastest ships had pulled ahead, losing contact with the main body. The slowest were falling behind, becoming easy targets if the humans chose to turn and fight. "Why do they not stop?" he demanded. "Why do they not stand and fight or run away? What kind of strategy is this?" No one on his bridge could answer him. Deep in the bowels of his command ship, the engineers were reporting problems. The constant high-speed maneuvering was wearing out the plasma regulators faster than expected. The navigation systems were struggling with the increasingly dense asteroid field, and the crew themselves were exhausted, having been at battle stations for nearly 8 hours with no rest. Zthrani biology was not designed for this. Their species had evolved as ambush predators, lying in wait for prey and striking quickly with overwhelming force. They could fight at peak intensity for short periods, but extended exertion drained them quickly. Their bodies needed rest to replenish the chemicals that fueled their muscles and minds. The human commander's words echoed again in his mind. "Persistence hunting." "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from Commander Chen." "Put it through." The human's face appeared on the display. She looked tired, Chen noted, but there was a calm confidence in her eyes that had not been there before. Behind her, he could see her bridge crew working at their stations, focused and efficient despite the damage their ship had taken. "Admiral Vorn," she said, "I notice your fleet is looking a bit spread out. Some of your ships seem to be falling behind. Are you having trouble keeping up?" Krixvorn felt his rage building. "You cannot win this fight, human. You are delaying the inevitable." "Am I?" Chen tilted her head slightly. "Let me ask you something, Admiral. How do your crews feel right now? Tired? Frustrated? Maybe making a few more mistakes than usual?" She leaned forward and her voice grew serious. "We can do this for days, Admiral. Days. How long can you?" The transmission ended. Krixvorn turned to Thesekai. "Get me the fleet medical officer." When the medical officer appeared on the internal display, His compound eyes were drooping with fatigue. "Admiral, I must report that crew efficiency across the fleet has dropped by approximately 30% since the pursuit began. The extended physical and mental strain is affecting everyone. I am receiving reports of accidents and errors caused by tired personnel. If this continues, we will begin to see serious casualties from crew exhaustion. How long can we maintain this pace? Perhaps another 4 hours before crew performance becomes critically impaired. We are not built for this kind of extended activity, Admiral. We need rest." Crixvorn ended the call and stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, he could see the signs of exhaustion in his own bridge crew. The tactical officer had made 3 errors in the past hour. The navigation officer was blinking constantly, struggling to focus on the sensor display. Even Thessakai, young and strong as she was moving more slowly than she had at the start. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we have lost contact with another 5 ships. Their communication systems have failed due to sensor interference in the iron cluster. And the humans? Still ahead of us, still moving. They have taken 2 more ships out of commission, but the others are still functional." Crixvorn did the mathematics in his head. He had started with 300 ships. He had lost 47, with more falling behind every hour. The humans had started with 17 and were down to 10 functional vessels. By pure numbers, he was still winning. But the numbers did not tell the whole story. His fleet was scattered, exhausted, and making mistakes. The humans were battered but still moving together, still fighting effectively, still drawing him deeper into the asteroid field where his numerical advantage meant less and less. He was beginning to understand what persistence hunting meant. The 10th hour of the chase began with a Zithrani cruiser slamming into a large asteroid at full speed. The collision destroyed the ship instantly, killing all 500 crew members aboard. It was the largest single loss of the battle, and it happened because the ship's tired navigation officer had been looking at the wrong part of the sensor display when the asteroid appeared. Admiral Crixvorn received the report in silence. It was the 63rd ship he had lost, most to accidents, some to mechanical failures, a few to the humans when they chose to turn and fight brief, vicious engagements before continuing their retreat. The human fleet was down to 8 ships now, 8 against 237. Still, they did not surrender. "Admiral," said Thessakai, her voice barely above a whisper, "I must ask you to consider withdrawing." Crixvorn turned to look at her. The young officer was swaying slightly on her feet, her compound eyes glassy with exhaustion. Everyone on the bridge was in similar condition. They had been awake and at battle stations for over 12 hours now, and their bodies were failing them. "Withdraw," he repeated. "We outnumber them 30-1. "We do, Admiral, but we cannot catch them. We cannot fight them. We can only chase them, and the chase is killing us. At our current rate of attrition, we will lose over 100 more ships in the next 10 hours. And the humans will still be there, still running, still leading us into traps and accidents. They must be as tired as we are." "They are not." Thessakai pulled up the data she had been compiling throughout the chase. "Their ship movements show no sign of fatigue. Their tactical decisions remain sharp and effective. Their formation discipline has not deteriorated. Whatever they are, however they are made, they are not getting tired the way we are." Crixvorn stared at the data in disbelief. It was true. The human ships moved now exactly as they had moved at the start of the chase. They dodged asteroids with the same precision, fired with the same accuracy, maintained their formation with the same discipline. 12 hours of constant pursuit had not slowed them down at all. The human commander's words played in his mind once more. They would chase prey animals across great distances. They would follow their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the creature simply collapsed from exhaustion. He was the prey now, he and his entire fleet. "Get me Commander Chen," he ordered. When the human's face appeared on the display, She looked exactly as she had 12 hours ago. Alert, focused, and calm. Behind her, her bridge crew continued working as if this was just another routine patrol rather than a desperate battle for survival. "Admiral Vorn," she said, "ready to talk." "How are you doing this?" he demanded. "Your fleet is damaged, you are outnumbered. You have been fighting and running for 12 hours. How are you still fighting?" Chen smiled slightly. "Admiral, 12 hours is nothing. My great-great-great ancestors used to chase antelope across the African savanna for 2 days straight. They would track the animal, follow it, never letting it rest, never letting it escape, until finally it just stopped and let them walk up to it. The antelope was faster, the antelope was stronger, but the antelope got tired. The human didn't." She leaned back in her chair. "Your fleet is fast, your fleet is strong, but your fleet gets tired and we don't. That is impossible. It's biology. Your species evolved as ambush predators. Quick bursts of intense activity followed by long rest periods. Mine evolved as endurance hunters. Slow, steady, relentless activity that never stops. We're not faster than you, Admiral. We're just going to keep going longer than you can." Crixvorn felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. Not fear of death in battle, which was glorious, but fear of something worse. Fear of losing a battle he could not win, no matter how many ships he had, because the enemy would simply outlast him. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to leave," Chen said simply. "Turn your fleet around. Go home. Tell your Dominion that this space is protected by humans and that we will chase anyone who threatens it until they collapse or retreat. Tell them the prey has become the hunter." The transmission ended. Crixvorn stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his exhausted crew waited for his decision. Behind him, the tactical display showed his scattered fleet, spread across millions of kilometers of asteroid field, each ship struggling with its own problems, its own exhaustion, its own failing systems. "Admiral," Thesikai prompted. Crixvorn looked at the display showing the human fleet. 8 small ships, battered and damaged but still moving, still fighting, still ready to run for as long as it took. He thought about his own fleet. How many more ships would he lose in the next 10 hours? The next 20? How long could he chase them before his entire force simply fell apart? He thought about the creature his ancestors had been, millions of years ago, before they had built their empire. They had been predators, yes, but they had hunted from ambush, striking quickly and retreating if the strike failed. They had never pursued prey that refused to be caught. They had never faced an enemy that could simply keep running forever. And he understood, finally, what the human commander had been trying to tell him from the beginning. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "All ships withdraw from the asteroid field. Set course for the hyperspace staging point." Thesikai's eyes widened. "Admiral." "We are retreating," Crixvorn said. "The human commander is correct. We cannot win this battle. Not today, not with this strategy." The order went out across the scattered fleet. The Zithrani ships, those that could still move, began the slow process of turning around and heading back toward open space. It took hours to gather them all, to account for the ships that had become lost or disabled in the asteroid field. In the end, Admiral Crixvorn left the system with 214 ships. He had started with 300. Commander Sarah Chen watched them go from the bridge of the Marathon. Her fleet was battered, her ships were damaged, and she had lost 9 vessels over the course of the 16-hour battle. But they were alive. The colony was safe, and the Zithrani were retreating. "Signal Earth Command," she said to her communications officer. "Tell them the battle is won. The Zithrani fleet is withdrawing." Around her, the bridge crew raised a ragged cheer. They were tired, all of them, but it was the kind of tired that came with victory rather than defeat. They had done what seemed impossible. They had made an enemy fleet of 300 ships turn and run. Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Then she straightened in her chair and began giving orders. There were repairs to make, wounded to care for, and a planet to protect. The work was not done. It never was for a human. There was always more to do, more to chase, more to endure. That was what made them who they were. News of the Battle of Earth-7 spread across the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council, which had largely ignored humanity as an insignificant newcomer, suddenly found themselves paying very close attention to the species from the third planet of an unremarkable star. The Zithrani, for their part, were in chaos. Admiral Crixvorn had returned to their home world with less than 3/4 of his fleet, having never fired upon the human planet he had been sent to conquer. The Dominion Council demanded explanations. Generals and admirals debated what had gone wrong. Scientists studied the data and tried to understand how a fleet of 17 ships had defeated 300 without winning a single traditional engagement. The answer, when it finally emerged, shocked them all. "They did not defeat us in battle," Admiral Crixvorn explained to the gathered council. "They defeated us by refusing to fight a battle at all. Every time we tried to engage them, they retreated. Every time we pursued them, we lost ships to accidents and exhaustion. They simply wore us down until we could no longer continue." "But they are weak creatures," protested one of the council members. "They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. How can they possibly pose a threat to the Dominion?" "They are not weak," Crixvorn replied, and his voice carried the weight of bitter experience. "They are different. Our strength lies in overwhelming force applied quickly. Theirs lies in endurance. They can keep fighting when we cannot. They can keep running when we cannot. They can keep pursuing when we cannot. And that makes them more dangerous than any species we have ever faced." The debate raged for weeks. Some called for a larger invasion fleet, one so massive that even human endurance could not overcome it. Others argued for a different approach entirely, perhaps diplomacy or economic pressure rather than military force. And a very few, suggested that perhaps the Dominion should simply leave the humans alone. Meanwhile, Commander Chen had become a hero to all of humanity. She had not sought fame or glory. She had simply done her job, protecting her planet and its people from an enemy that should have been unstoppable. But her tactics had captured the imagination of humans across all the colony worlds. The persistence hunting strategy, as it came to be called, was studied at every military academy. Her name became synonymous with the kind of patient, relentless determination that defined the human spirit. 3 months after the battle, she was summoned to Earth itself, to the headquarters of the United Earth Defense Force in Geneva. The Supreme Commander wanted to see her personally. Chen had never met Supreme Commander Tanaka before. He was an older man, his hair gone gray, his face lined with decades of service. But his eyes were sharp, and they studied her carefully as she entered his office and saluted. "Commander Chen," he said, "please sit down." She sat in the chair across from his desk and waited. Tanaka was not the kind of man who engaged in small talk. "You did something remarkable at Earth-7, he said. "You took a fleet of 17 ships against 300 and made them retreat without ever engaging in a decisive battle. The Council is calling it the greatest tactical victory in human military history." "Thank you, sir, but I did not do it alone. My crews fought brilliantly." "They did, but the strategy was yours." Tanaka leaned forward. "I want you to tell me how you developed it. Walk me through your thinking." Chen considered the question carefully. "When I learned about the Zithrani invasion fleet, I knew we could not win a conventional battle. 300 ships against 17 is not a fight. It is a massacre. So I asked myself what advantages we had that they did not." "And you concluded that our advantage was endurance." "Yes, sir. I had studied the biological data on Zithrani physiology. They are impressive creatures in many ways, stronger than us, faster than us in short bursts, better armored. But they tire quickly. Their metabolism is not designed for prolonged activity. They need to rest frequently to recover." And humans do not. Humans can operate at moderate intensity for extraordinary lengths of time. Our ancestors evolved to chase prey across the African plains for days at a time. We sweat to regulate our body temperature. We can eat and drink while moving, and we can recover from physical damage that would permanently disable most species. We are not the fastest or the strongest, but we are perhaps the most persistent species in the known galaxy. Tanaka nodded slowly. So you decided to turn the battle into a chase. Exactly. I chose terrain that would favor us. The asteroid field required constant maneuvering, which exhausted their crews faster than ours. I kept my fleet just ahead of them, always in sight, always drawing them deeper. I let them think they were about to catch us at any moment, and I waited for exhaustion to do what weapons could not. It took 16 hours. It could have taken longer. I was prepared to run for days if necessary. The marathon carries enough supplies for 2 weeks of operations. My crews train for extended combat situations. We rotate personnel through rest cycles to maintain alertness. The Zthrani had no such systems in place. They expected a quick battle followed by victory. They were not prepared for what we gave them. Tanaka was silent for a long moment. Then he rose from his chair and walked to the window, looking out over the city of Geneva. The ancient buildings mixed with modern structures, a testament to humanity's long history and its constant drive forward. Commander Chen, he said without turning around, I am promoting you to Admiral. You will take command of the First Fleet, our largest and most capable force, and I am giving you a mission. Chen rose to her feet, her heart beating faster. What mission, sir? The Zthrani will return. They always do. Their empire is built on conquest, and they will not accept defeat easily. When they come back, it will be with a larger fleet and better tactics. They will have learned from their mistakes. He turned to face her. I want you to make sure we have learned from ours as well. Sorry. The persistence hunting strategy worked at Earth 7 because the Zthrani did not understand what they were facing. Next time, they will be prepared for it. They will rotate crews, establish rest cycles, and develop countermeasures. We need to stay ahead of them. We need to find new ways to use our greatest strength against their greatest weakness. Chen thought about this. You want me to develop a comprehensive doctrine for endurance warfare. I want you to change the way humanity fights wars, Tanaka replied. We have always been at a disadvantage against other species. They are stronger, faster, better armed. But if Earth 7 proved anything, it proved that we have an advantage no one else possesses. Our bodies are designed for the long game. Our minds can handle extended stress. Our spirits can endure when others break. He walked back to his desk and picked up a data pad, handing it to Chen. This is the latest intelligence on Zthrani fleet movements. They are gathering forces near the border. Our analysts estimate they will launch a new invasion within 6 months. This time, they will send 500 ships or more. Chen looked at the data. It was worse than she had expected. 500 ships. Even with her new tactics, that would be a difficult fight. I will need more ships, she said. You will have them. We are accelerating production across all the colony worlds. By the time they attack, you will have 50 vessels under your command. 50 against 500. Yes, Tanaka met her eyes. But you have proved that numbers are not everything. The question is, can you do it again? Can you make 500 ships retreat the way you made 300 retreat? Chen thought about the chase through the asteroid field. The endless hours of maneuvering, the constant tension, the gradual wearing down of an enemy that should have been invincible. She thought about her crews who had fought without rest and without complaint, who had endured because that was what humans did. She thought about what it meant to be descended from persistence hunters, from ancestors who had chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. She thought about the fundamental truth of human nature that had served them so well throughout their history. Humans did not give up. Humans did not stop. Humans kept going long after others had fallen. "Yes, sir," she said. "I can do it again." And she meant it. The next 6 months were the busiest of Admiral Chen's life. She worked around the clock, developing training programs and tactical doctrines and fleet formations. She studied every piece of data about Zthrani biology and psychology that the intelligence services could provide. She ran simulation after simulation, looking for weaknesses in her own strategies before the enemy could find them. Her new doctrine centered on what she called the marathon principle. Every human ship would be designed for extended operations. Every crew would be trained to fight for days without rest. Every battle plan would be built around the assumption that victory would come not through superior firepower, but through superior endurance. She instituted rotating crew schedules that allowed ships to maintain combat readiness indefinitely. She designed logistics systems that could resupply vessels on the move without stopping for rest. She developed communication protocols that allowed her fleet to coordinate while scattered across millions of kilometers of space. But most importantly, she worked on the minds of her people. She taught them to think differently about warfare, not as a series of battles to be won, but as a long race to be run. She showed them that their bodies and minds were their greatest weapons, capable of outlasting any enemy if properly used. The crews responded with enthusiasm. They were tired of being seen as the weak species, the soft humans who could not compete with the natural predators of the galaxy. Chen gave them a different story to believe in. She showed them that their weakness was actually their strength, that the traits other species mocked were the very things that would save them. By the time the Zthrani invasion fleet arrived, Admiral Chen and her 50 ships were ready. The Zthrani had learned from their defeat. This time, they had brought 500 ships organized into 5 separate battle groups, each capable of operating independently. They had implemented crew rotation schedules and rest periods. They had studied human tactics and developed countermeasures. But they had not counted on what Admiral Chen had prepared for them. She did not wait for them to come to her this time. Instead, she took her fleet out to meet them at the edge of the system, in open space where there were no asteroid fields to provide cover. The Zthrani commander, a general named Vraxton, was surprised but pleased. The humans were finally going to fight a proper battle. The two fleets closed toward each other, the Zthrani in their standard conquest formation, the humans in a loose cloud that seemed almost random. Vraxton ordered his forces to attack. And then something unexpected happened. The human fleet split into 10 smaller groups, each heading in a different direction. They were not retreating exactly. They were spreading out, forcing the Zthrani to split their forces as well if they wanted to pursue all of them. Vraxton chose to concentrate on the largest group, which included the flagship of Admiral Chen. He sent 200 of his ships after them, confident that superior numbers would finally bring the humans to a decisive battle. The chase began again, but this time it was different. Admiral Chen did not run in a straight line. She led the pursuing Zthrani on a weaving path through the system, changing direction constantly, forcing them to adjust their formation again and again. Every course change took energy. Every adjustment took time. Every moment of the chase wore them down a little more. Meanwhile, her other 9 groups were doing the same thing to the Zthrani forces pursuing them. The entire battle had become a massive, system-wide chase, with 500 Zthrani ships trying to catch 50 human vessels that refused to be caught. General Vraxton understood what was happening. He had studied the Battle of Earth 7. He knew what the human commander was trying to do, but knowing was not the same as stopping. "They cannot run forever," he declared to his officers. "We will wear them down eventually." But the hours passed, and the humans did not slow down. Their ships seemed to have unlimited endurance, able to run and fight and run again without ever needing to rest. And worse, the human groups were coordinating their movements, leading the Zthrani formations into each other, creating confusion and causing accidents. By the 10th hour, General Vraxton had lost 30 ships. The humans had lost none. By the 20th hour, he had lost 80 ships. The humans had lost 3, and only because those vessels had suffered mechanical failures unrelated to the chase. By the 30th hour, almost 60 ships were gone from his fleet. His crews were exhausted beyond recovery. His officers were making mistakes that would have been unthinkable at the start of the battle. And still, the humans kept running, kept fighting, kept wearing them down. Vraxton finally understood what Admiral Crixvorn had understood 6 months before. This was not a battle that could be won with superior numbers or better weapons. This was a contest of endurance, and the humans were simply better at it than any other species in the galaxy. He ordered the retreat. The Zithrani fleet, what remained of it, withdrew from human space. They had come with 500 ships and left with less than 400. They had not destroyed a single human colony. They had not won a single decisive engagement. They had simply been run to exhaustion by an enemy that refused to stop. Admiral Chen watched them go from the bridge of her flagship, the UES Endurance. Around her, her crew was tired but triumphant. They had done it again. They had proved that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or numbers, but the simple ability to keep going when others could not. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any message could travel. The humans had done it again. They had turned back an invasion force of 500 ships with only 50 of their own. And this time, they had done it in open space, without the advantage of terrain. The Galactic Council took notice. The other species of the galaxy, who had viewed humanity as a curiosity at best and a nuisance at worst, began to see them differently. These soft, weak creatures without claws or armor had defeated the most feared conquering species in the galaxy. Twice. And everyone began to understand what it meant to face an enemy that simply refused to stop. The third invasion never came. The Zithrani Dominion Council debated for months, studying every piece of data from the 2 failed attempts to conquer human space. Generals and admirals proposed strategy after strategy, each one promising to finally overcome the human advantage. But every simulation, every analysis, every calculation led to the same conclusion. The humans could not be conquered, not because they were stronger, but because they would never stop fighting. Any invasion force, no matter how large, would eventually be worn down by an enemy that could keep going indefinitely. The cost of victory, if victory was even possible, would be greater than any possible gain. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Zithrani chose not to conquer a species they had decided to conquer. The news of this decision sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Other species that had been conquered by the Zithrani took note. Some of them began to wonder if they too could resist, if they could learn from the humans and find their own ways to endure. Admiral Chen returned to Earth as the most celebrated hero in human history, but she was not satisfied. She knew that the Zithrani would always be a threat, that peace built on the ability to outlast an enemy was fragile at best. She needed something more permanent. She proposed a bold plan to the United Earth government. Humanity would offer to share its knowledge of endurance warfare with any species willing to stand against the Zithrani. They would build a coalition of the persecuted, a mutual defense pact that would guarantee protection to anyone who joined. Some in the government thought it was too risky, others thought it was too ambitious. But the Supreme Commander, who had come to trust Chen's judgment implicitly, supported the plan. Within 5 years, the coalition of enduring peoples had grown to include 12 species from across the galaxy. Each had their own strengths and weaknesses, but all of them had learned the lesson that humanity had taught, that persistence could overcome any obstacle, that the long game was worth playing. The Zithrani Dominion, faced with a coalition that could match their numbers and exceed their endurance, began to change. For the first time, they entered into genuine negotiations with their neighbors. For the first time, they accepted borders that they had not conquered. For the first time, they began to think about their place in the galaxy in terms other than domination. It was not peace, not exactly, but it was better than war. Admiral Chen retired from military service at the age of 60, having served humanity for over 30 years. She had never sought fame or glory, had never wanted to be a hero. She had simply done her duty, protecting her people with the one weapon that no one else in the galaxy possessed. On the day of her retirement, she was asked to give a speech to the graduating class of the Defense Force Academy. She stood before the young officers, these men and women who would carry on the work she had begun, and she thought about what she wanted to tell them. "You are all familiar with the story of how humanity defeated the Zithrani," she began. "You have studied the tactics, the strategies, the technical details of our victories. But I want to tell you something that no tactical manual can teach you." She paused, looking out at the eager faces before her. "Our ancestors evolved on a harsh planet, surrounded by creatures that were faster, stronger, and deadlier than they were. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. By every measure of physical strength, they should have been prey, not predators. But they survived. They thrived. They eventually spread across that planet and then beyond it to the stars themselves. And they did it by developing one ability that no other creature possessed, the ability to keep going when everything else had stopped. That is your heritage. That is your strength. You are the descendants of persistence hunters, of marathon runners, of people who chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. And no matter what weapons you carry, no matter what technology you wield, that is still your greatest weapon. The galaxy is full of species that are stronger than us, faster than us, better armed than us. But none of them can outlast us. None of them can keep going as long as we can. And that is why we will always survive, no matter what challenges we face." She looked out at the young faces, seeing in them the future of humanity. "The Zithrani called us weak. They looked at our soft bodies and our lack of natural weapons and they saw easy prey. They learned differently, but there will be others who make the same mistake. There will always be enemies who think they can break us, who think they can outlast us, who think they can make us give up. They will all be wrong. Because we are human, and we do not stop, we do not give up, we do not surrender, we keep going always no matter what. That is who we are. That is what we do." She smiled, the same smile she had worn on the bridge of the marathon 30 years ago, when she had first taught the Zithrani what it meant to face a human. "Now go out there and show the galaxy what persistence looks like." The applause that followed her off the stage was deafening, but Chen barely heard it. She was thinking about the future, about the young officers who would carry on the tradition she had started, about the galaxy that would never again underestimate the species that simply refused to stop. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as the strongest or the fastest, but as the most persistent, the ones who kept going, the ones who never gave up. The marathon runners of the galaxy. And they were just getting started.